Welcome to JR Network Tech. I'm JR, and I'm coming at you with another Cisco how-to video. If you are new to this channel, please do me a favor and click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss a single video. Now, in our previous video, we actually discussed in a vast, oversimplified explanation why IP addresses on our interfaces are important to enable IP communication, which we can also call layer 3 communication. But we also went through a configuration example as well of how we can actually configure an IP address on our Cisco router interface. Well, in this video, it's time to actually get two routers to talk. That's right. We're going to pull up a second router, configure an IP address on that router's interface, and then we're going to connect our second router with our first router that we configured in the last video, and we're going to see if we can get those things talking. So I'll leave a link to the previous video on configuring an IP address on a Cisco router interface in the description below. But for this video, we're going to get right into the equipment and we're going to see how we can get these two routers talking. So if we notice our topology here, we have router 1, which we had already configured in our last video with an IP address on the interface gig 0/0. And we have router 2 pulled up here as well. We're going to configure that too. And we're going to use that router's interface gig 0/0. But before we get started, let's go into router 1 here. And we just want to verify our configuration. So here in router 1, we want to use our verification command. So we're going to do a show IP interface brief. Notice the shortened form there, show IP int for interface, BR for brief. So we can do that in a Cisco command line. So let's pull that up and let's look and see what we have. So as we stated before, we already have an IP address configured on our gigabit Ethernet 0/0 interface. We have the IP address of 192.168.1.1. If you remember, we did that with a /24 subnet mask. And currently the status is administratively down and protocol is down. So it's in what we call a down and down state. Now let's go through one additional verification command. We're going to do a show run interface gig 0/0. And that's going to show the running configuration for this interface. Now notice, remember we have a subnet mask of /24. So we actually do see that noted here. Notice the subnet mask portion of our IP address statement, 255.255.255.0. Notice also that this interface is still in the shutdown state. So if you recall, looking back up here at our show IP interfaces brief, remember the status is administratively down. Now what does that mean when it's administratively down? That means we as the administrator have to do something to bring it up. Namely, we have to turn it on. So keep that in mind. That's going to be a little important later. But now we know what's going on with our interface here in router 1. So what we're going to do before we start configuring router 2, let's go into configuration mode here in router 1. And one habit that I like to get into, especially when you're dealing with multiple routers and network devices that have multiple interfaces for different purposes, is I like to put a description in the interface. So let's go to interface gig 0/0, and we're going to use the command description. So we're going to type that out, and for this description, we're just going to make it really simple because we just want to know what this interface is going to be connected to. So we're going to say link to R2, which is our router number 2, our second router there. So we're just going to hit enter, and we are going to type N to bring us back out into privilege mode. And what we'll do at this time is we'll just simply do another show run interface gig 0/0. And notice we now have the description of this interface noted in the running configuration. So if you see here, the description is link to R2. And that's an important thing if you're working in a large enterprise environment with a myriad of routers, or if you're working in a service provider environment where you have links to other service provider networks. Maybe you have a network-to-network interface, or NNI as we will call it. You may have multiple sub-interfaces configured under that main physical interface. And it's important to have descriptions there noted so that you know what's going on, what each thing is going to, what its purpose is, and a lot of nice, simple, brief, but useful information that we can put in the description under an interface. So that's my little rant about descriptions on an interface. So now that we have that straightened out, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to router 2, and we're going to do our verification first. So we're going to do a show IP interfaces brief. And let's notice what we have here. So we have our physical interfaces listed here. We have 4 of them. And like we said before, we're going to configure gig 0/0. So we're going to configure gigabit Ethernet 0/0. Currently, it does not have an IP address assigned, and its current status is down and down. So we're going to use gigabit Ethernet 0/0, and let's just make sure of our running configuration as well. So we're going to do a show run interface gig 0/0, and there we go. It shows us our running configuration. As we can see, once again, no IP address. It's in a shutdown state, so the interface is turned off. So now that we have those verification commands squared away, let's go ahead and get into configuration mode. And in configuration mode, we are going to go to our interface, which is our interface gig 0/0. And if we recall, the IP address that we used on R1 was 192.168.1.1. So what we're going to do, we're going to, again, make it easy on ourselves here. We're going to configure this interface with an IP address of 192.168.1.2. And once again, our subnet mask is going to be a /24, so it's going to be 255.255.255.0. So what we did is we kept this within the same subnetwork as our interface on router 1. So that makes it really nice and easy for us. We're going to hit enter, and we're also going to put in our description for this interface. And we're simply going to say link to R1. That's it. Oh, and it looks like we had a little typo there. So let's hit our up arrow and see where we spelled description wrong. So let's spell that right. Description, we have that spelled right now, link to R1. It's nice of the Cisco iOS to let us know when we messed up, especially when it comes to our syntax, so that we can go ahead and correct it before we just mess up the entire configuration. So that's a really nice feature as well. So we're going to go ahead and type in N to bring us back out into privileged mode. And let's run our verification. We're going to do a show IP interface brief. And now we have an IP address assigned to our gigabit Ethernet 0/0, and that IP address is 192.168.1.2, which we configured. And let's do another show run interface gig 0/0. And what we have here, we have our IP address configured with our subnet mask, and we also have our description right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to GNS3, and we're going to actually physically connect these two interfaces. We're going to physically connect the routers together via their interfaces of gig 0/0. All right, so now we are connected. So we're connected now. We have IP addresses on both of our interfaces. So this should work for us now, right? We're done. Wrong. We are not done. There's still something we have to do. This is not going to work as set up and configured. And I just want to prove that to you. If we go ahead and try to ping our router 1 from router 2, so we're going to do that. We're going to use the ping command, and we're going to ping 192.168.1.1 from router 2. And doesn't look like anything's happening. Let's see. It's pinging, and look at that. The success rate is 0%. We lost 100% of our packets that we tried to send over the router 1. And if we go to router 1 and try to do the same, so let's ping 192.168.1.2. Let's see what happens here. We're not able to send anything over this link between the two routers. Well, why is that? Well, notice something that we said when we did our verification command early on. Now let's do our show IP interface brief, and notice we have our gigabit Ethernet 0/0. We have our IP address 192.168.1.1. If we go over, we have our OK column. We have our method column. Notice our category here. Remember, this says administratively down. Now, what does that mean? One more time. That means that we, as the administrator, actually have to do something to get this thing working right. Well, what is it that we have to do? Well, let's go through our other verification command, our show run interface gig 0/0, and notice a shutdown is what we have here. So it's in a shutdown state. I cannot emphasize this enough. Don't forget to turn the interface on. So that's what we missed here in this configuration. So what we're going to do, since we're already in router 1, let's go back into configuration mode, and we're going to go back into interface gig 0/0. And to turn the interface on, we're going to put in the no shutdown command. And what do we expect to see? Look at that. We have a notification here saying that our status on the interface changed to up. So now if we type in N, go back to our privileged mode, and we do a show IP interfaces brief, notice we now have a status of up, and we now have a protocol status of up. So now this interface is up and up, as we like to say, and that's what we want to see. But we're not done yet. We have to do the same for gig 0/0 on router 2. So let's go to configuration mode here. We're going to go into our interface, and we're going to use the command no shutdown. And what do we expect to see here? Look at that. Our status changed to up. Let's come out of this into privilege mode, and we're going to do a show IP interfaces brief. And look at that. We now have a status here of up and up. So now, how is this going to affect our ability to communicate between the two routers? Is that going to change anything? Well, let's see. Let's do a ping 192.168.1.1, which is the IP address of the interface on router 1, and let's see what happens. Look at that. Success. Now, it did drop one piece of information in the beginning, so our success rate is 80%, but that's because it has to kind of learn how to get there and learn its way back. So if we do this ping command again by just hitting the up arrow to bring our previous command back, and we're going to run ping again, and look at that. 100% success rate, no drops. Let's do it one more time just to make sure. No drops. Let's go over to router 1, and can we do the same here and have a similar result? Let's see. We're going to ping 192.168.1.2, and what do we have? Yes. Look at that. 100% success rate. So we have successfully established communication, IP, layer 3 communication between these two routers. And it looks like we're done here. So what we're going to do with this time, since we have success, we've tested, we've verified, we're going to do our write command for router 1 so that we can save this configuration. And look at that, it's saved successfully. And we're going to do the same for router 2. And we are done. So that's how we do that. So in this video, we saw how we can go from configuring an IP address on a router interface to now enabling and verifying communication between two routers that have their interfaces directly connected. But what about when it comes to things that aren't directly connected? Well, that sounds like that's going to be a subject for a later video. But for now, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. If you like what you see here, please go ahead and click the like button. Please subscribe to this channel and go ahead and hit that bell icon so that you don't miss a single thing. And also, please share this video with your friends, your family, your colleagues, so that everyone else can get a chance to learn some of this valuable content that we're dishing out here about networking technologies. Once again, thank you for watching. I'm JR. This is JR Network Tech, and I'll see you in the next video.